As she mentioned, my name is Joel Waugh. I'm the CISO at WMATA. I'm happy to be here at this conference with owners, operators, and vendors discussing the real issues of cybersecurity and how we can implement cybersecurity in our systems. I, on the other hand, I'm not here to talk about cybersecurity. I'm here to talk about my concern of that dirty word compliance and how the way I see things maturing, how compliance could detract from our ability to do real cybersecurity in the future. Quick run of the agenda, give you some context and background, define the problem statement. In other words, why am I concerned? I'm going to talk about what we've done at WMATA and the benefits of the program we've built to date. I'm going to talk a lot about future work that we still have to do in order to get to a position where I think we're healthy. And then we'll go ahead and we'll wrap it up. So I think most people in the room, we've been practitioners for a long time. We understand what cybersecurity is. We understand what compliance is. I'm going to go through a few definitions, though, just to really set the tone of what I'm talking about. If you're looking at NIST guidance, there's a lot of different definitions for cybersecurity. Some of the guides say cybersecurity is the prevention of damage to, protection of, and restoration of computers, electronic communication systems, electronic communication services, wire communication, and electronic communication, including information contained therein to ensure its availability, integrity, authentication, confidentiality, and non-repudiation. That was a mouthful. Other guides call to measures and controls to ensure confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Other guides still call to processes for protecting information by preventing, detecting, or responding to attacks. I also pulled something from a recent LinkedIn post by Dr. Ron Ross of NIST that I found very applicable to what we do in transit. Something he had thrown at the bottom of one of his recent LinkedIn posts is the key to cyber survival in the 21st century. Penetration resistance first, damage limitation next, and resilience always. That's what we're worried about in transportation. Compliance, on the other hand, is a program within a company. It's a set of internal policies and procedures put in place in order to comply with laws, rules, and regulations, also to uphold the business's reputation. Compliance team examines the rules set forth by governing bodies, creates that compliance program, implements it throughout the company, and enforces adherence to the program. I think we all understand that, and everybody also understands the basic tenet that compliance does not equal cybersecurity. Having a compliant program does not mean you are cyber secure. Compliant companies get breached and hacked all the time. Compliance is still important, though, because what we do, we are heavily regulated. We are required to follow federal laws and regulations. We are required to demonstrate that compliance program. Okay, so the basic problem, extremely simple words. Compliance is difficult. Jesse from Amtrak had a great slide. I'm absolutely going to steal the format that he used, describing the complexity of the systems that we manage. This monstrous amalgamation of information technology, operational technology, on-premise systems, sensors and detectors scattered throughout a large geographical area, cloud systems, some of it we manage, some of it fully managed by third parties. The technology itself is complex. The environment that we're regulated by is also complex. The number of laws, the number of security directives is growing. The number of configuration guides that we can pull from, whether it's an APTA guide or NIST guide, ISO, ISA, IEC, extremely complex regulatory and external base applied to an extremely complex environment. So compliance itself is extremely difficult. What is even more difficult is demonstrating that compliance to an increasing number of external entities that have a vested interest in ensuring that we are meeting those federal laws. So that increasing compliance requirement, it can and it will distract from our owner operators' ability to actually perform real cybersecurity operations. Not only is our regulatory environment complex, it will become more complex. I don't have any spies at TSA, but feel free to sound clip this and fact check me 5 years from now. I guarantee you that future versions of the security directive will contain even more requirements. They will be even more granular, even more prescriptive, therefore increasing the burden of our compliance requirement. That's just organic growth of this compliance regime that we have. We all know that a major incident like Colonial Pipeline is going to change everything immediately for all of us. And here's the thing, it doesn't even have to be a major breach like Colonial Pipeline. This is a real headline. The headline itself is not accurate. We were not breached by Russia. It was a contractor who had access. He had worked for WMATA for 10 years. It was a failure of business processes. It was a failure of his employee leadership to remove access, based on a contract expiration. Not a major incident. But what this did for me, the Inspector General's report, and then the publicity that this got, this changed my schedule for 12 months. Significantly changed my schedule for 12 months. The number of briefings I had to give to our executive leadership team, to the general manager, to the board of directors increased dramatically. The number of questions I was asked in those meetings increased dramatically. The number of meetings I had with 3- and 4-letter agencies in Washington, D.C. exploded. Everybody wanted to know what we were doing and how we were doing it. I had no fewer than 6 interactions, we'll call them, interviews, interrogations, however you want to say it, with cohorts from House and Senate committees, staffers from House and Senate committees, some of them pleasant, some of them not so pleasant. Basically, this was not a material incident, but it really increased the amount of work I and my team had to do to demonstrate that we actually did have in place an effective cybersecurity program. All right, so how are we trying to get ahead of what I do see as a very real problem, a very real growing problem? We were early adopters of the NIST risk management framework. In fact, I've joined WMATA in 2019. My former boss, the former CISO of WMATA, he recruited me from the federal government specifically to implement a federal style assessment and authorization process based on NIST 837 Rev 2, the security controls in 853 Rev 5. So that actually helped a lot. Over the past couple of years, we've been building out a team purpose-built to do that work. We rewrote our policies, we created workflows, instructions, and all the tools we need to actually do that significant amount of work. Regarding policy, WMATA had about 12 different policies that were owned by cybersecurity. We took all those policies plus cybersecurity snippets that existed in other policy. We completely rewrote them. We completely aligned them to the security control framework in 853 Rev 5. What we ended up with is a policy that's about 30 pages long with a required policy manual compendium that's about 270 pages long. 300 pages of very specific requirements aligned item for item to the NIST risk management framework, which increases our authority to be very directive of how security controls are implemented across all IT and OT at WMATA. Something we've done recently, we at WMATA were light rail. We are not within the scope of this TSA security directive. There is one that applies to us. It covers incident response only. But I have chosen, and I've got my management to agree to voluntarily align with this TSA security directive. So what this does for us is it gives us an ability to have a federally mandated, federally backed watermark for security controls that's somewhat less than, say, a lower moderate baseline from 853. So when I get asked, why did you select that control or why did you not select this other control? I can point to this TSA security directive and say we voluntarily complied with this, and that asks us to do access control, segmentation, vulnerability remediation, and continuous management. And of course, I always love free stuff, so we are very much engaged with DHS, TSA, CISA, any of our federal partners. They are very helpful more often than not. They offer assistance, we bring them in. I've been very open with them of what we are doing well, what we're not doing well, areas for improvement. Any guidance they have, I accept. Any services they have, I accept. CISA has some really great partnerships for incident response plan testing. We're going to do that. We're going to do a 2-tiered incident response plan testing, one at the functional level and one specific for executives and board of directors to really let people know their role in a major incident. We've done some pretty good work. Benefits of it, alignment with known framework and standards. One of the problems with audit is that sometimes the person being audited and the auditor are not speaking the same language. They're not asking the same question. When you're using the same framework, they ask you, how are you complying with this thing? You point to the thing, you point it through your systems, and you show how you are complying with it. It does make audits a little more easy in the sense that it facilitates that kind of communication. It provides end-to-end traceability. As I was saying before, audit is, compliance is hard because of the complexity of our systems, the complexity of all the settings multiplied by all the systems and the assets we have. Ensuring that some paragraph within an APTA guide is applied to a sensor detector on some rail segment within our network is a complex task. By trying to align it to a framework, hopefully it'll make it easier to get that end-to-end traceability. And apologies for the simplicity. This is my crayon sketch. But what I was trying to describe with this sketch is that complexity of the relationship between everything we're managing with all the external requirements, laws and regulations, APTA guidance directives, best practice guidance, has to be one-for-one related to what's in our policy. Any break there can be an audit finding. What's in our policy has to be one-for-one what's actually inputted into a system. Any break there can be a finding during an audit. All of the settings in our system have to be described in a system security privacy plan, have to kick out into continuous monitoring artifacts, all of that fed to internal and external compliance audits. By aligning to that framework, you have that end-to-end bidirectional traceability that provides better visibility into how we're doing the granular things that we are expected to do. Another big benefit that we are going to get is external program validation from our federal partners. By voluntarily aligning with the TSA security directive, we can bring them in on an annual basis. We can show them our cyber implementation plan, and we can get them to say, yes, you have met the requirements of the security directive. Again, compliance is not equal cybersecurity, but what that does is gives me a seal of approval that I can use to answer questions so I can go off and do real cybersecurity. All right. What I've described is about 3 years worth of work that we've done so far. I'm very proud of the amount of work we've done so far, building out the GRCs, writing that policy, building out all of our workflows and work instructions, getting PCNs, hiring that team. It's been a lot of work, but it is in no way, shape, or form descriptive of a finish line. It is the start line for what we need to do over the next 3 to 4 years in order to actually have a program that answers the mail. So there's a lot on here. The good news for those of us owner operators is there are plenty of vendors in this room that are operating in these spaces and would be more than happy to talk to you about any one of these things. So one of the things we're focusing on first, digitization and automation. When it comes to digitization, I'm talking about both processes and the actual things that are happening on our network. I'm still concerned with the number of manual processes that we have at WMATA, the number of paper forms, PDF forms sent out via email. Those are okay as an after the fact review of whether or not somebody requested and was actually approved access to a system. What it doesn't do is kick out structured data that can be used to analyze that activity in real time. So we have to digitize those workflows. When it comes to digitization on the network, when I first got to WMATA, if I would ask for asset list for anything, what I would be given, most of you probably understand this, is a spreadsheet. A spreadsheet that was manually created, maybe updated once every quarter, maybe once every year, based on somebody who was a subject matter expert and had been doing that job for 10 years. And we have to get away from that. We need real-time, digitized visibility of what's happening on our network, either on the box or on the wire. If it can handle it, you have some sort of agent like an EDR on your systems. real-time protection, real-time visibility, real-time data of what that asset is doing and everything else it can see. We are expanding our series of collectors across our network. So across the wire, we can see everything that's talking on those different network segments. We can pipe all those packet captures into a cloud backend, strip the headers, and have an understanding in real time of what device firmware version is on the network, what it's talking to, and what it's doing. You tie that then to other data stores like our vulnerability scanner or our asset management tool or our configuration management database, and now you have a real-time picture not only of what is on your network, but what should be on your network. And you can start to alert on things that are outside the norm. Not only does that give you real security, but that rich data set can then be automated in terms of rules and alerting to direct your security operations, but also automating your compliance activities. Continuous monitoring is the next output of that automation. Coming from the federal government, we've been doing continuous monitoring for 10-ish years now. I don't know how robust the federal government has gotten in implementing continuous monitoring. What I want to get to, though, is a state that is similar to what you can get from a pure cloud environment. All of us have talked to Microsoft and Google. We've talked to cloud security vendors that overlay on top of our cloud environment. Since everything in that cloud is code, everything is digital, excuse me, they can, at a push of a button, create a compliance dashboard aligned to any framework you want. NIST, ISO, PCI, doesn't matter. It'll show you the control. It'll show you the percent compliance with that control, and you can drill in and see your deviations and what needs to be done to fix that. That's what I think we need to get to in transit. And if we digitize enough, we can at least get to something resembling that state. Based on digitization, automation, continuous monitoring, now we get to a point where we can have some really good improved metrics and really good dashboards. Again, that dashboard that I want for a cloud environment would be real-time dashboard showing how we are complying with different security metrics, not a point-in-time security assessment out of a GRC, but a real-time dashboard. In terms of metrics, one of the things I'm leaning on, and you don't have to use this, but I'm looking at what Gartner calls outcome-driven metrics. We do have a lot of metrics in place right now. We do robust cybersecurity awareness training. We do robust phishing simulations. All those produce a rich data set that shows how well our staff is at not clicking these malicious links. What we need to go toward, though, is marrying those data sets with other data sets that actually show the business value of what we're trying to do. An example from the outcome-driven metrics, ransomware resilience. It's a major metric, which would incorporate the results of our phishing simulations, status of cybersecurity awareness training, status of our database backup and backup tests, and a couple other metrics. Each one of those defined as how that individual program is working, but then combined up to that specific desired business outcome that shows whether or not our spend in cybersecurity is actually delivering value. And if it isn't, what can we do? What can we improve? What do I need in order to deliver that specific desired business value? The next one, it's a little bit of a pipe dream, a little bit pie in the sky, but this is something that, having been a practitioner, having written system security plans, having audited system security plans and been audited against the system security plans that I wrote, what we need is to really leverage natural language models to automatically create the control implementation statements. We need natural language models and automatic robotic process automation to comb through that body of external guidance that we need to comply with. Generate for us automatically a matrix of every requirement. Comb through our policy sets. Generate a matrix of everything we say we're doing, diff those two, and then show any variance so we know if we have a break between what we say we're doing in policy and what we're expected to do by that external regulation. Same thing with the creation of system security and privacy plans. If we have a rich data set that continuous monitoring data set that shows how we're actually doing security. Our system security and privacy plans can be written in real time with 100% accuracy, describing exactly how security is applied to our systems and the state of that security control. And again, that compared to policy to make sure everything is aligned, dress right dress. Seems like a lot of work, but let me give an example on why that is a problem and why that is important. We had a finding from our safety committee that reviews us in place of FTA, the Washington Metro Rail Safety Commission. What they found is that there was a deviation in wheel space measurement. Not that we were measuring wheel spacing incorrectly. We had a specific process describing how we measured wheel spacing. We had described why we use those specific measurement techniques and the value of that, and we were following that process document. What they found is that in the APTA guide, there was a different requirement for wheel space measurement, and the APTA guide said you can deviate, but you have to specify that you're deviating and state why. So it was a technicality that we did not state we were deviating and specify why. And I don't say that to try and degrade findings like that. It's real. I mean, process exists for a reason. Documentation exists for a reason. That linkage exists for very real reasons. But what I say that for is to try and get everybody to imagine if you have thousands or tens of thousands of pages of documents describing the security for your transportation systems, and there are X number of mistakes on each page of that documentation, how many thousands or tens of thousands of findings are waiting for us when somebody comes in and starts aggressively combing through every single page of our documentation? So it cannot be a manual process. It is right now for most of us. You have a team of experts that knows the external regulations, maps that to policy, helps administrators apply it to systems, and writes this documentation. But that cannot be the state of the future. So the first three, I'm sure there are many vendors who could absolutely come in and help any one of us do those. That AI, natural language model, I hope people are working on it. At WMATA, I don't know how much ability I'm going to have to do testing in the space, so we're probably going to have to rely on you all as vendors to help us with that. And the last one is to get a third-party certification. So I have a supply chain, a cybersecurity supply chain risk management program. My vendors and suppliers, I ask them how they're doing corporate security. I appreciate when they can give to me some sort of certification, whether it's a SOC report or a certification that they comply with NIST, really anything from a known framework that they've been evaluated, their corporate security program follows a known framework, known guideline. I can accept that in lieu of a very lengthy vendor supplier questionnaire, cybersecurity questionnaire. What I need is that same kind of certification because I am a service provider to many people in the Washington, D.C. area. We just had a discussion with the House and Senate staff office that manages transit benefits on behalf of our elected representatives and other staffs. And that's what they were asking me. How are you protecting our data? How are you protecting credit cards? How are you managing your operations safely? What I need is simply to be able to provide them a document, a letter of attestation that says, I'm good, and make those kind of assessments and all. It's easy. All right, conclusion, talked a lot about the need to make compliance easy. I don't think most of us have been buried under wave after wave of audit yet, but I do see it coming, I promise you. So whatever you're doing in your cybersecurity programs, make sure you're devoting ample time to ensure that that program can kick out artifacts that are used to help you demonstrate how you're doing actual cybersecurity. As a benefit, what I'm doing now has already helped me to create metrics that I use to brief my executive leadership and the board. It's helped me to create pretty decent presentations that I can use to demonstrate the business value of my program and to request money if I need a specific business outcome to show them what I'm trying to do, what I need to do it, and the business value of that. Of course, there's the third-party risk management aspect that I described, but most importantly to all of us, we provide transportation to people. Those people have to trust every time they get on our trains, our buses, our paratransit, that equipment is safe and effective. I have a role in that from cybersecurity. My riders, they have to trust that their data they're providing when they sign up for transit benefits is protected. The credit cards they're putting in our system, that I'm keeping that information safe, doing everything I can to keep that information safe. And I recently had a discussion with the Riders Advisory Committee, a subcommittee of the board of directors for WMATA, and they were asking me these kind of questions. How do you protect our data? How do you keep our credit card information safe? This is an article. It's very slow, so I'll describe what's on the screen. This is an article that came out this year. The article didn't relate directly to cybersecurity. What it related to is a crash on the metro system in 2009 at Fort Todd. It killed 9 passengers. That crash removed Metro's ability to use ATO. We have been in manual operation since. What it was is a track occupancy sensor that was faulty. It was reporting as active, but it was incorrectly reporting the status of that track. The track showed as vacant, it was not, and a train on ATO rolled through that track as though it was vacant, and it caused a massive crash. So basically what this group of people is asking WMATA is, we understand that you state you've improved your maintenance program, your inspections over all of this equipment that's needed to run safe rail operations, but how are you going to describe to us, your riders, what you're doing? I saw when I read this that I do have a stake in that. The data that I'm collecting, the data that I'm providing could help answer this question. But also I see that I'm going to have to answer this question more and more for cybersecurity. And all of you know, we can't share too much of the details of what we do in cybersecurity. I can't share penetration test results. I can't share vulnerability scan results. So I need some mechanism to show to our riders that we are a safe option for transit. I have no idea what transit's going to look like in 20, 30 years from now, but I want to do everything I can today to make sure that Metro is part of the picture, whatever it looks like 20, 30 years from now. And that's it.
Thank you so much, Joel. We have about a minute or two for questions, if anyone on the floor. Okay, I'm gonna use the microphone for you here.
Hey, Joel, on the topic of making compliance easier, would something like a NIST cybersecurity framework profile for you make, and then other operators like you make that quite a bit easier to kind of point and match your your operations to that profile?
So I'm willing to entertain anything that's based on federal standards or federal guidance. And yes, the short answer to your question is yes. But one of the main points that I'm making here is that just having that risk profile is part of it. I need that all of that internal work, that digitization, the automation, in order to map from what we're actually doing to that risk profile, so we can drill down and see exactly and prove definitively that we are doing everything we state we're doing. Correct.
Yeah, go ahead, Mark.
So, could you talk maybe a little bit about the role for like GRC type tools to help with compliance? And I'll just make a statement that I know that there are people who are working on, NIST aligned GRC type tools specific to the TSA security directives. And so I don't think they're available yet, but they should be soon. But I mean, how do you think about these tools?
We have a GRC. I couldn't live without it in terms of helping us define a clump of assets in a NIST term to what we can call a system or a general support system. It's invaluable. Maintaining that, mapping the security controls to that system. Couldn't do it without a GRC, couldn't do it with a spreadsheet. Managing the workflow of the assessment and authorization activities, an incredible amount of work goes into that. After a system is assessed and authorized, the plan of action milestone, all the work to fix any vulnerabilities that are identified against that collection of assets. could not live without a GRC. And GRCs, I think, are getting better. I think many GRCs are moving toward that kind of automation that I'm talking about, in terms of once you've done the work of identifying a set of assets that is a system, applying your security controls, tying into data stores in order to automate the compliance reports for that system. In my experience, GRC may be great, but if the processes in the company are not, then all you're going to get is a very expensive manual process that's going to produce a point in time results from 12 months ago.
You mentioned that the good part of that automation or special compliance will rely on cooperation with the third parties or supply chain. How do you see that happening in terms of technologies that you might or process that may require the supply chain to adopt to integrate with your process? Would you are expecting the supply chain to align to your process, or to be aligning to something standard? Or
Very short answer, yes. We are asking industry to align to our standards. For example, on the 8000 series rail car, and you probably know this, I can see your shirt. The 8000 series rail car, one of the first things I did at WMATA was create a cybersecurity addendum specific to that purchase, where we asked that the bidders align to the NIST framework and provide to us at delivery penetration tests of the rail car, software, firmware, code assessments. I don't ask that you give us the code. I understand that industry is pushing back on that a lot, but do the assessments and provide us those static and dynamic code assessments, and then provide us how that train meets controls as mapped to NIST security controls. That actually does help me a lot. If I can ingest that information, put it into our GRC, create a type body in the GRC for 8000 series rail cars, I ingest that from the vendor, I put it in, and then develop my mechanisms for monitoring as best as possible rolling stock to ensure they don't deviate from those. My mechanisms for monitoring as best as possible rolling stock to ensure they don't deviate from those controls as written.
so you expect to integrate into a system that WMATA will own and operate.
I do, but what I expect is a deliverable in a certain format. I do understand that most of that work is on me, integrating it into my risk management system, integrating into my GRC and my continuous monitoring process. So I'm preparing to do that work. I just need the input that would facilitate me doing that work.
Thank you.